Welcome to another episode of Auto Off Topic. How are you, Brad?
Andrew, I am wonderful. How are you tonight?
Great.
Sounds good.
Yeah. What, I don't know. Where do you want to start?
I don't know. Do you want to start with the cat fight that I heard outside my window as we started recording? Did that go through the mic? I hope it didn't.
Maybe a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
it was funny. I was checking on a couple things in the Q45. I had the garage door open and the cat must have gotten in the garage. And I felt this thing brush against my leg. I looked down, the cat's outside. I was like, okay. And she went under the Montero, and I was like, come here. And then she came out, and I was like, all right, we got to go back
in the house with you.
inside.
Yeah. So you didn't have an epic cat story like I did in the Staring On a few months ago?
No.
All right, good. That's good then.
No, but occasionally I've been letting her, if I know the garage door is closed, I'll leave the basement door to the garage open to make sure that she can get in there and check for mice.
Oh, that's a good plan. I didn't think about that. That's the reason,
Yeah.
the reason to have a cat is to be a mouser.
Yeah, so far so good. Haven't seen any. I don't know. Maybe just the smell of the cat in the basement keeps them away. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. All winter New England problems.
Yeah, because it's been a couple of cold days here. So
yeah, the mice looking for someplace warm, and any open door or even tiny little hole, they'll find their way through. So
yep,
not surprised.
Yeah, I got to go. Not only do I got to get some car covers, I got to do the miceification, whatever. I don't know. What do you want to call it? Anti-micing?
I don't know. Mouse prevention?
Yeah, I put I do the Irish Spring in the car.
Yep.
It smells good. Then I got this mint spray. You spray over the tires and under the engine bay. It's really strong peppermint smell. It keeps them away.
Yeah, I've always done the Irish Spring and the bounce sheets. They seem to be a good combo of good smell and keep the mice away without that mothball smell. Anyway, this episode of the Cat Fancy podcast is well underway. So moving on to cars, I think we've done some fun stuff.
I mean, I noticed especially I got the battery tenders on. I'll open up the hood in the spring, and sometimes there's a little bit of nuts and stuff left on top of the battery because probably it's warm from the battery tender.
Sure.
So yeah. Anyway,
you put some extra Irish Spring right on top of the battery this year.
We've been away, but
we have. You were out here in the West Coast, and we didn't get a chance to record an episode last week. So
yeah, I was out for some top secret work stuff. So, but it worked out because I think we talked about on the last episode going to Japanese Classic Car Show.
We didn't talk about going to the show yet. We talked about you talked about going to Japanese Car Day in Massachusetts.
No, but we talked about it coming up because it was coming up.
Yep.
And that I was going, I think. But before, so I flew out Friday, did some work, was okayed by my company to stay over the weekend so I could start, because I needed to start first thing Monday morning anyways at the office out there. We had a bunch of stuff going on. So it worked out because the schedules lined up. JCCS was that weekend. I had some work projects that were falling in place, and it was like, yes, I don't have to pay for the airfare.
Yeah, no, it worked out well.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, so I was already out there. I was staying south of LA in the Foothills Ranch area, and you and Naomi made reservations in Long Beach because that's normally where the show is, but they moved it.
Yeah, the show's normally in Long Beach, and we have a hotel that we like to go to because it's right near the old venue and it has an underground secured parking garage.
It's a pretty dope hotel too.
Yeah, it's a very dope hotel. Yeah. It's our one big splurge each year. And honestly, the reason we do it is because the first year we went, it also happened to fall on our anniversary weekend. So we're like, let's, make a whole big thing out of it. And now we really like the area. We like the hotel, and it's worth a couple extra bucks because at the end of the day, I mean, it's not that much more money than a regular hotel. So
anyway, the sprawl of urban LA is massive, but it worked out that the show was in Anaheim. It was basically in between the two of us. I was south, you were on the coast.
Yep.
So it worked out. It was 30 minutes from each of us. So I drove over there, parked in a mall close by because you guys were like, no, you cannot wait in line to get in because it'll take forever. And I was like, it's probably fine. And you're like, no, it's really bad to get in.
Yep.
But I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because you had to drive the Cressida there.
Sure. So in order to drive the Cressida there, I first needed to do things to the Cressida.
Yeah, so let's talk about what was going on with the Cressida.
I'm sure you remember last episode I had done had some issues with the brakes in the Cressida, and it turned out there was a broken spring. I think I talked about that and the rear drum brake assembly.
You did.
So that was all fixed. Everything was great. I drove the vehicle to and from work just as like proof of concept that everything was fixed before we took it for the 300 plus mile drive to Anaheim or Long Beach first, I guess. So I drove it to work, which is like 32 miles each way. So it went a total of 64 miles and everything was fine. Or so I thought. So I parked the car in the garage, didn't think about it. A couple days go by. It's now Friday, which is the day that we're going to leave for Long Beach when I get out of work. So I'm already like a little flustered that I didn't take the day off because now we're not leaving for a 6-hour drive until a minimum of 6 o'clock at night. And I'm like, that was a poor decision making on my part. So unfortunately, though, I am in a new job. I haven't like built up time off yet. I'm trying to save some time for the holidays. Like it's a whole thing. But anyway, so I'm at work. I'm telling them all what I'm doing. They all say I'm crazy. But since I'm doing that, they're going to kick me home a little early that day. They're like, "Don't worry about it."
Think that it's only 6 hours.
I don't understand.
It's like
driving across country like so many times.
It's like driving from Boston to New York, or actually Philly.
Yeah, it's fine. People just they think driving is crazy. I don't understand like what kind of world we live in where it's totally normal to sit in an airplane for 6 hours, but driving a car for 6 hours, that's a bridge too far. Anyway, especially when they're car people. But anyway, so they're like, "Well, you're crazy that you're driving there tonight. Like, why would you do that? Well, I have to be there at like 7 a.m. So it doesn't make any sense to like try to leave at 1 a.m. to get there for 7. I might as well just leave tonight and get a few hours sleep and go from there." So they kicked me out a little early. They said I could leave at 4. Unfortunately, you know how that goes. I didn't actually get out the door until like 4:30. And I'm driving the car home, not the Cressida, just my normal everyday car. Which, newsflash, is also broken. We'll get to that later. So I'm driving home, and I get a phone call from Naomi, who says, "Hey, I just moved the Cressida out of the garage to pack it for our trip. So, anything that says I just moved the Cressida out is obviously going to end in bad news, right?" So she says, "There's a big puddle next to the right rear wheel of where the right rear wheel was in the garage." She goes, "And the back of the wheel is soaked in what looks like brake fluid." Okay. So now in my head, I'm like, well, we're already in a time crunch. I don't know what could be leaking. I didn't disturb the brake system at all, except to put the spring in. Like I didn't actually break the lines open. I didn't do anything with the wheel cylinders other than relieve pressure off of them to get the spring in and then put pressure back on with the new spring. I don't know what it could be. I'll just bring a big bottle of DOT3 and we'll check it every 100 miles. This is a bad idea, obviously. So I come around the corner to get home and I see the car in the driveway, and Naomi had taken the initiative to actually jack the car up and take the wheel off for me. So now my lazy brain of we'll just drive it and fill up the fluid as we go along has already been like overruled. So I'm like, oh, looks like I'm getting in there to do something. So big thanks to her, big ups to her, because I was fixing to make a bad decision because I was annoyed. So I look, and sure enough, there's brake fluid everywhere. Not that I doubted her diagnosis. I was just annoyed at the whole prospect of it. Turns out that it's leaking horribly bad out of the wheel cylinder. Thankfully, when I prepared to fix the brakes before, when I found out it only needed the spring, I had bought enough parts to do a full brake job on both sides in the back. So I had new shoes, new hardware, and new wheel cylinders, and everything ready to go. So we pulled the old wheel cylinder off, put the new wheel cylinder on, and had the whole job done in 25 minutes. It's amazing how fast things get done when you're under crunch, right? And that includes bleeding the system too. Like we had it all done, bled, full pedal back, everything ready to go in 25 minutes. So what I'm assuming is that the spring probably broke because the wheel cylinder had seized up or gotten like close to seizing. Because if you remember, I had an issue where the brake stuck open or stuck closed, open, stuck on. The brake was dragging for a while. So what I'm assuming is that wheel cylinder was going bad. It either had a bunch of crustiness in it and it was holding the brake out and it put too much tension on the old spring and snapped the old spring. And when I put the new spring in and closed, the wheel cylinder back up and put the shoes back in either side of the wheel cylinder and squished it in, I probably ripped something that wasn't ripped. Like maybe something let go inside. One of the rubber seals was probably part of the reason it was sticking, and it ripped through it and it tore that seal and it was no longer holding brake pressure. And it was leaking fluid out the system, obviously. So put the new wheel cylinder in. The car stops better than it's ever stopped since I've owned it the second time around. So my assumption is there was always something going wrong in that right rear wheel. And the spring was just a consequence of that. And then putting the new spring in caused more tension on the old wheel cylinder and caused it to burst. So thankfully, with her help, and again, more than enough thanks, because I never would have done it that day. I would have just been annoyed and driven and probably crashed into somebody when I had no brakes at some point. So she made the right call. I went ahead and did the brakes, and everything is good. And we made it to Long Beach, unfortunately, at like 2 a.m. And we had to be in Anaheim by 7 a.m.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because I woke up at 3 a.m. because I'm on East Coast time.
Yeah, and you saw the text message I sent you an hour earlier saying, hey, we just got here. You're going to try to take a nap. So in hindsight, next year, I will probably take Friday off. That way we'll get to enjoy the nice fancy hotel that we have for more than 4 hours the first night. And not really enjoy it because we didn't get to go to any of the amenities or the restaurants. We just literally fell asleep and woke up way too early and went to the car show the next day. So, but yeah, we got there, and that's I guess the important part, right? And other than that, the car was flawless. Everything ran good. Everything worked fine. There was no moments where I thought anything was wrong. We got in, got out of town, and life was good. The biggest issue I think we had was after getting the brake system set, and the reason we got there at 2 a.m. is the first 20 miles of our journey took us an hour and 45 minutes. So
yeah, just traffic.
It just turned out that everybody decided to stop knowing how to drive that Friday night in Phoenix, and literally the first 20 miles in the 10 in Phoenix took us somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours to get out of town. So for 20 miles, that's obviously not acceptable. That's Boston rush hour traffic. That's not Phoenix at 7 p.m. traffic.
No.
So
I haven't seen that car in a while. It was funny.
Well, yeah, you haven't seen it since I sold it in 2015 or 2016.
Yeah.
So that was a long time ago.
It's just really funny. It has a giant stereo in it because it's just so not you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me either. It's very not our style to have a giant stereo in it.
Yeah, well, we've both done speakers in the past, and people who have known us long enough probably remember a funny story about you and me and speakers getting mad at each other at one point. But we've done speakers in the past, and that's about it. We've never done anything beyond that. And I think I only ever did speakers in the car to replace broken ones. It was never to have a thumping, booming stereo system, right? So,
right.
But yeah, no, it's a big stereo in that car. It's got multiple speakers, and then it's got two 10 or 12-inch subs in the trunk, which are absolutely obnoxious. And
I mean, it would probably give you some more trunk space to get rid of.
It's got a huge trunk. It doesn't even the only thing that bothers me is the sub box is so big that I can't put the full size spare in it. I had to put the temporary spare in it from the Sapporo.
Oh,
so, because where the edge of the box goes is where the tire would be on the spare tire. So when I got the car back, it had the rim in the back, but they took the tire off because they couldn't put the box in the trunk with the tire in there. So I put the temporary spare from the Sapporo in there for now. And I just haven't ripped the box out because I don't know stereo stuff. And I don't want to just have a bunch of exposed wires back there. So I just haven't taken it out and looked into it, and I'm gonna have Naomi's son Jordan, so Arizona Jordan, is going to fix that for me because he's a big stereo guy. So he's going to replace that, huge 212s with all those amplifiers with like a normal little like 6-inch sub just to make some music and take advantage of what the wiring is already there. Like just put it so it makes a nice little tone, a nice sound, but doesn't rattle the back window out of the car.
Yeah, because you showed me it would.
Oh yeah, it would. Thankfully, I found that bass knob, which was hidden on the dashboard. I didn't. Because the first time I put the car on, and you listen to anything other than like, anything. And the bass was so heavy, it just shakes the whole car. But there is a knob that controls the amount of bass that the thing puts out, so you can put it to a normal level. So I have these two giant, huge subs in the back, and I have the bass turned so far down because I'm, official old man. But it does sound good when you want it to. It's just not my style. So,
all right. So we'll leave it there. We got to the show, but we'll do some other project car updates before we talk about the show because the show's a deep dive.
Deep dive. I mean, just go into the rest of my project car stuff before we move on.
Well, yeah, I don't have any project car stuff this week.
So the last thing we talked about in the Colt was I had an issue with starters, and we got the starter in the car, and it turned out that the gear that's on the end of the stator, the one that actually engages with the flywheel, was too wide. So it wouldn't fully disengage when you like unkeyed the start portion of the ignition. So the stator would go in, and then the gear was just too big, so it stayed like kind of meshed with the flywheel and just made a grinding noise forever. So obviously that's unacceptable. I was going to go ahead and send the part out and have it remanufactured, but that was going to be 2 weeks for the original one. And I found another one online, and I was like, I can have that here in 4 days. I'll just try that one more time in 4 days, and we'll get it from there. So part came, 4 days came and went, another 4 days came and went, another couple days came and went. In hindsight, I could have had the original one rebuilt in the same time period by the time I got back to it, but I got back to it finally 2 days ago, and went to put it in, and the starter bolts were now missing. Now, I know Naomi had put them in a glove, like a rubber glove. I put them in the crate that I had the two starters in. But I don't know what happened to them after that. I don't know if I picked them up inadvertently thinking it was just an old glove and threw them in the trash. But starter bolts were nowhere to be found. So that was fun. Thankfully, you still had the starter bolts from the emergency starter replacement you did before the car got shipped out here a year ago, last week, actually. So you were able to measure them for me, so I knew what size bolts to get. And I went down to my local Ace hardware store, which, miracle upon miracles, had the exact bolts. Were you not surprised by that, Andrew? That was pretty impressive, I thought. That they had
a shoulder?
Yeah. Yeah, I sent you a picture. You see it?
No.
Yeah, they were a metric bolt with the shoulder the right length and everything on the top of it.
And their flange?
So, yeah. They were exactly the bolts that go in the car. So right down.
Do you want me to mail those other ones?
I don't even need them, no.
All right.
Don't even need them.
I'll just throw them in the street.
Throw them in the street. Or hold on for next time I lose bolts. But anyway, they the Ace Hardware had them in stock, so I was able to throw those in there. And then I learned that this new remanufactured starter did not have threads in the starter, which annoyed me because the old starter had threads in the starter, and you just line it up, put the bolt through, and it threads into the starter. In this case, I had to now go back to Ace Hardware and get nuts and lock washers and make sure the bolts were long enough that they come through the starter all the way to engage the bolt on the other side. Thankfully, the starter has a little bit thinner of a flange because it doesn't have the thread part in the starter, and I was able to do that. But what a nightmare it was getting the nuts onto the top part of the starter because you can't. It's underneath the intake manifold. It's in between the intake manifold and the solenoid on top of the starter. So there's like no way to get your hand in there at all. So thankfully, Naomi was home again, helped me again. I can't thank her enough again. She held the bolt. She held the nut. She could get the nut on the front of the starter and like put pressure on it, so that I could like feel my way through with the bolt and like start to spin it while she held it, and then get a super long extension on there and hold it in place, and managed to get it done. But that was an absolute disaster and nightmare to get together. But it's together. Cracked the thing over. Starter works. Everything works. Life is good. I've driven the car to and from work the past 2 days, so that's 120 miles, and it's worked flawlessly since. So no complaints. The car is back on the road. It's now the only fully broken car that wasn't broken. Last report is still a Sapporo, so I got to fix that. So.
Well, why were you driving it to work? Did you have another broken car?
Well, I was driving it to work because I fixed it. Volkswagen is like broken in spirit, but it still works. It just makes a lot of weird noises. Stupid car. I'm so mad about it right now. So Volkswagen Jetta Daily has a noise that I can only describe as it sounds like what a pulley sounds like when it's coming apart, and it shakes and rattles and all that good stuff. So I have this rule where if I have a normal modern car that I have like payments on and has some sort of warranty, I don't ever work on it. I just don't want to. There's too many other projects to deal with working on the Daily. So I dropped it off at the Volkswagen dealer and I said, hey, it sounds like I have a pulley that's starting to come apart. I figured if it was warranty, great. If it wasn't, it would probably be expensive, but I just didn't want to deal with it. And a couple $100 was a couple $100. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a big deal. I mean, it is a big deal. It is a big deal, but yeah, it's the time. I don't want to deal with fixing it myself in the driveway, and I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to work on the car. It's transportation. It's daily car. I like the car, but I'm not like at the point where I want to work on the car. So I get a call back from them. They give me a laundry list of things to fix that totals $6,000.
What?
Yeah. So one of the things in the list, and then the biggest part of this list...
Were they paying everybody's mortgage this month with it?
Yeah, they don't want me to pay mine, that's for sure. So the one thing on the list that's the biggest part, it's almost $4,000, is a clutch and flywheel. And I said, well, hey now. The clutch, yeah, it's $4,000 for a clutch and flywheel. So I'm like, all right, listen, the clutch works fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't change with the clutch in or out. It's not a throw-out bearing. It's not the clutch. He's like, well, it's the flywheel. And I'm like, all right, why is it the flywheel? So he gives me a call, and my service writer, not new in the game, been doing this for a few years now, is telling me that my dual clutch is failing.
Okay.
So I asked him to explain to him what the dual clutch was. And he said, your car is a dual clutch and it's failing. And I said, my car is a manual. And he said, yeah, dual clutch. And I said, this is not confidence inspiring at all. So I let him continue to be wrong. And I said, listen, I don't understand what you're saying. And you're telling me that if I put $4,000 into the car, it may or may not fix it. He's like, well, you have a crack in your radiator fan. I was like, okay, well, this noise is not caused by a crack in the radiator fan. Like, that's not even it. Like, it's definitely not it. He goes, and your transmission mount is starting to fail. It's collapsing. I said, okay. Well, they're not like hydraulic, they're rubber. So they either they're good or they're not. So whatever. I'm not going to argue any of this stuff. I said, can you just explain to me what is going on with the clutch and why it's making noise? And he's like, well, I really don't know. I just know that the tech said it's the dual clutch. And I'm like, well, can you do me a favor? Can we talk to the tech again? Can we get verbatim what he says and come back and tell me what it needs? Because if you're expecting me to pay $4,000 to fix the car and you can't tell me what's broken, I'm going to have an issue with that. I can't afford to spend $4,000 right now. But
let's go buy another car.
Yeah, exactly. $4,000. You only put $6,000 in this car that I paid $9,000 for. It's I don't think that's going to happen. So anyway, going back and forth, he calls me finally the next day. He says, I'll call you by 10 o'clock tomorrow. No worries. Sure. So 1 o'clock the next day, I get a phone call finally. And he says, all right, talk to the tech. He says, your car is a dual mass flywheel. Like, okay. He says the springs inside the dual mass flywheel, he said, they don't often, he said, but occasionally they fail. He said, so what happens is there's no tension on the dual mass part of the flywheel, so it doesn't, like, I guess, I'm not really versed in the dual mass flywheel, but what I'm assuming it is it's almost like the little spring-loaded things inside a distributor, the Advance, that as it spins at certain speeds, it like expands out to absorb the clunk of transmission and shifting.
Yeah, it kind of gives you a little less feel through the clutch pedal.
Right. So I'm looking into this. I'm trying to figure it out, and he's telling it to me. So what it sounds like is those springs have failed, and those big weights are just kind of like clomping around in there.
Like my car has one, right? So it's pretty common.
And I remember
driving it. It makes driving it in traffic feel better. Like it doesn't versus like our single mass normal one. You feel a lot of vibration through the pedal, like a lot of feedback through the pedal.
Well, you feel a hell of a lot less vibration than I feel now. Put it that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he said it's failing. So I've dealt with this before because I put a clutch in the old Jetta I used to have. I had that 01 Jetta Wolfsburg, and I swapped it out for a single mass flywheel and a clutch when I changed
very
it.
Common, like very, very common.
So I'm looking.
370Zs used to be like this, and
so I'm looking
a couple of customers when I was at Infinity switched to the Nismo flywheel or whatever, and it actually made the car drive like way better.
Yeah. So I'm looking into like what it takes to do this now. I'm like, listen, I'm not spending $4,000 to put a clutch in the car. I apologize. I said, I don't mean to waste your time. I said, but I didn't think it was going to be a clutch. I thought it was going to be a pulley noise. That's what it sounded like. I didn't do any investigating. I made a wild assumption, figured it'd be a few $100 and call it a day. I said, but I can't in good conscience spend $4,000 putting a clutch in a car. Like
so much.
Even if I wanted to pay somebody to put a clutch in a car, it wouldn't be $4,000.
It should be $1,000 or less.
The parts are expensive, so I'm figuring $800 or so for labor and another $800 to $1,000 in parts. So if I'm spending $2,000, it's a little more palatable. It's still a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but it's easier to swallow. Okay, because if the parts are almost $1,000, no matter what, I'm buying parts, right? So if I'm only spending an additional $800 or so to fix the car, then great. Now, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do what I did last time. I'll buy a single mass flywheel. I could probably do this in the driveway. It's probably not a huge job. Like, I could probably get away with it just for parts pricing, right? So I'm going back and forth, and I'm looking at what parts are available. And I come across all these threads online, and I need to do some more digging because I just found this out today when I was looking at lunchtime. Supposedly, if you switch from a dual mass to a single mass in the diesel transmission, it causes issues with the synchros, and you blow the transmission up within like 10,000 miles.
Oh.
Yeah, but only in the diesel transmission. So now I'm like, great. So a dual mass flywheel is like $700 alone. So now I'm frustrated because I do love my car. It's a good car. I got a great deal on it. It runs good. It drives good. It gets great fuel mileage. I like the car. I enjoy the car. Every time I think about getting rid of it and trading it in, I just kind of look at it and go, what am I going to buy? Like, what am I going to buy does what I need better than this car?
I mean, I would call Volkswagen customer service and raise hell with them because the clutch is not worn out.
No, not at all.
Clutch works fine.
Yeah. But also at the end of the day,
and so like, okay, but here, listen, this is my reasoning, right? So the clutch is not worn out. That means the flywheel is not worn out. Mm-hmm. The flywheel broke. It did not wear out. It broke.
Sure.
So why is it not covered?
Here's the deal.
Broke.
My car is a diesel buyback car.
Right.
I have a 150,000 mile warranty on internal engine parts and emissions related parts.
Right.
Flywheel is not an internal engine part, and I was shown explicit documentation from the dealership that shows it's not covered.
I don't care.
So it's in writing. It's also.
I don't care what the dealership shows you. I would always tell people if you don't like what we say, you call Mitsubishi customer service and you complain to them, and then they will take care of you because you complain to Volkswagen.
Well, I will certainly give it a try, but they gave me documentation from.
The worst thing they say to you is no.
Correct. I agree.
Or they make you just pay the labor and they cover the parts.
Sure. But the labor at the dealership is $3,000 of that, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
But the documentation they showed me was from Volkswagen showing what's covered, what's not. So it is in writing. So I don't have much of a case, but you're right. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? The only other issue I'm thinking of, and now my train of thought is gone, Andrew, and I apologize. I had a thought and now it's gone. Oh, also, the big thing to remember is that this car is a 2013.
Yeah. So
it's nowhere near a new car.
It's not. But this would be buyback car. They usually bend over backwards for buyback cars.
Yeah, well, we'll
see. When I was at Audi, like everybody got everything for free when you had a diesel buyback car.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens
because they really messed up when they.
So here's the other thing. Stuff. So we start talking about diminishing returns. So here's the other issue. I got a bunch of online quotes from these places that buy used cars right now.
Yeah.
And I got a quote from AutoNation for like $8,300.
Okay.
So I might just sell the car to AutoNation. Because they can deal with it later. I don't care. So here's the other issue. I was planning on, if I got rid of it, running it through Cars and Bids because turbo diesel wagons with a 6-speed are an enthusiast car. And they sell on there. They've sold a couple between 13 and 14 grand. So I was like, I can get that kind of money for my car. But first, I had to fix the paint issue on the front. I had to fix the bumper, and I have to fix now this clutch issue. So if I spend a couple of grand here, a grand there, I spent $3 grand. $8,300 plus $3 grand is what, 11,300? What do I really make plus my time?
Kind of breaking even.
I'm breaking even, and that's not even a guaranteed sale at 13, 14 grand. It's a guaranteed sale at $8,300. So I have to actually go to AutoNation because they won't honor their price without seeing the car first. I did describe the damages to the car. Like, I was totally honest about the fact that the front bumper was cracked and the clear coat was peeling on the hood. So we'll see what they say when I get there. So
try it.
I'm going to try this weekend. I mean, what else? I think that's step number one because I just don't. It's just frustrating, and obviously I owe less than that because we only paid less than 10 for the car. So I've had it for 3 years. So I probably owe.
It's annoying because you're not going to get anything. You're not going to be able to get another car for that much.
Yeah, but I don't even care.
Currently.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not. I spent a ton of time looking, and the only enthusiast cars that I would even spend the money on are maybe a Fiesta ST, and I used Fiesta ST still $20,000.
Yeah,
they were 23 brand new. I can't. The only car that I would go into any kind of loan on would be another diesel pickup truck for practical purposes, and I drive 64 miles a day right now. I don't need a pickup truck.
Yeah, not great.
So yeah, so I'm just kind of I don't really need anything. It's wintertime is here right now. That's the cool time of year here. The cars don't have air conditioning. I can drive to work. I have the Eclipse. I have, the Colt, the Sapporo, the Cressida. That's 4 cars. I'm not really hurting for a car here. It's ridiculous for me to even think like that. And the other thing is I still have that 97 Saab back in Massachusetts that I own outright. I don't owe anything on it. I'd like to try to plan a trip out there to spend some time with the family for the holidays and maybe just drive the Saab home and just drive that as my daily out here because that's a totally reasonable daily car, I think, right? Especially when I don't owe any money on it. It's kind of like let's just save, the $200 a month I was spending on a car and put it towards maintenance and restoration and all the other cars. Right? I mean, am I not thinking clearly here?
No.
I think it sounds like a decent plan. I mean, the Saab is an automatic, so now my brain automatically is like, well, what about how the manual swap is? And then I say, no, Brad, just be a reasonable human being and just drive the car. So, whatever. It is what it is. I just don't. It's fruitless to complain about it because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. It's not like I don't have transportation. And worst case scenario, most days Naomi works from home and she's got a 2011 Sonata sitting in the yard that runs fine. So it really doesn't matter that much. So I don't need an enthusiast car to drive 64 miles each way to work, or back and forth to work, right? Just need a traffic car. So we'll see what happens. There's other ideas up my sleeve too, where I'm like, I could get something interesting and drive that every day, and do I need that? I don't know what I need. So I look at it all as good problems to have, not bad problems to have. The only reason I balk a little bit at the older car every day is that we won't any longer have a fairly new, fairly low mile, reliable car that we can just jump in and take a long weekend to Oklahoma or San Diego or Dallas or wherever. So I will miss having that option because, her 2011 Hyundai is 220,000 miles and a 97 Saab is a 97 Saab. Like, none of them are going to be that, like, worry-free experience we have in the Volkswagen, So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's all a good problem to have. Updates as they come. But maybe I'll wind up fixing the Volkswagen and running it on Cars and Bids anyway. Who knows? But I can't in good conscience run the car on Cars and Bids without fixing the clutch first. So, knowing there's an issue there that's possibly a ticking time bomb, I want to make sure it will be taken care of before then. So I wouldn't. I would sell it to a dealership, but I wouldn't sell it to a private party. So at least if I sell it to a dealership, then it's got the dealership can back it with their lemon laws and all that stuff. But I wouldn't. I would never do that to a private party and sell them a car I know is actively breaking. So anyway,
yeah. Enough of that. Stop talking about that.
Yeah, good, nice, good, fun car stuff. Positive show. We started with cats, so we started on a good high note, and then moved quickly into Depression City.
So back to Japanese Classic Car Show.
Yes.
We met in Anaheim at this mall that was close to the stadium. So it was at Angel Stadium.
Yep.
So I hopped in the car with you and Naomi, and we drove over and waited in line for a while, and it was pretty organized.
Yeah, it's a very organized show.
So it really wasn't that bad in hindsight, waiting in line to get in. Like, we really didn't wait in because they ended up with 5 or 6 lines of cars. Yep. So it felt like you weren't at the end of this 100-mile line.
Yeah, I'd say it took probably about a half hour, 45 minutes to get in the show from the parking lot.
Yeah, which is fine.
And it wasn't a big deal because it was like a car show before the car show because you were in you were surrounded by other show cars, communicating with other show car people. And honestly, the real reason for the line was because of the stadium, not because of the event organizers.
Yeah.
It was because the stadium wanted to have full security, and they literally did a full, metal detector wand search, and they looked inside everybody's car and in trunk and in coolers and made sure you weren't bringing in booze because they don't allow it there, for non-tailgating events, I guess. Actually, there were permanent signs that said no alcohol, which is weird for a parking lot of a baseball stadium. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. No tailgating. So anyways, we get in. You were parked over with 4 or 5 other Cressidas?
They were 4. They were 4 of my generation Cressida.
Yeah.
And then there were 4 X7s and 1 or 2 X8s.
So it was interesting. The show is kind of broken up by almost by car style, model, make. I guess. Am I saying that right?
So when we walked in, the first thing, when you walk in as a spectator, the first thing you saw, I guess, let me rephrase that. If you went to the opposite side, where we drove into the show, the first thing you saw was a bunch of S10, S11, S12 Silvias, so early Silvias. Mm-hmm. Across from that was a bunch of other Nissans, but they were all Datsun 1200s and earlier. So it was pre 510s. And then you went a little further and it was all Toyota trucks. And then across the Toyota trucks was imported Toyota sedans like Crowns and Carinas and stuff. And then after that was a bunch of Cressidas and Cressidas and early Camrys were in there.
Yeah, so there was some curation to it.
It's very curated. And the one thing that you brought up after the show, after looking at other areas of the show, was it seemed like each section had their own curator to park the cars. And some of them were more creative than others. And the guy who organized the Cressidas had us all at least he put a spot and a half in between each car so they weren't stacked up on each other.
Yeah.
But we were all just backed in straight into spots. And we went to some of the other displays and they had them more Radwood style where the cars were parked to be pleasing to the eye versus
facing each other.
Or, yeah. Which you can see in some of the pictures we posted on our personal pages and on the Auto Off Topic page. That there was a lot of space between each car, which is nice for walking around and spectating, and also for being able to see a whole car and take a picture of a whole car without having another car in the picture, or another car taking a huge portion of the picture, I should say.
Right. So I'd never been to this before, and I'm really mad that I'd never gone before. Now that
It's a hell of a show. Yeah.
And apparently it was this was a really good show, and apparently it's even better when it was at the park in Long Beach. Because obviously it's in a park and on grass by the water, which would be way nicer.
So one of the other
hot pavement parking lot.
One of the other big changes that the park brings is they had the cars laid out differently. So what they do before the show is they take like I don't even know what you call it. It's like a white tape, and they line out the parking spots, and they have each car. So the people who run the show curate the parking situation, so you don't have that mismatched by section parking situation. You have a really good flow through the whole show, which they didn't seem to do here at Angel Stadium, probably because it was kind of a last minute venue change, and they were just kind of scrambling with a bunch of things. So I think that they're just so used to doing it at is it Marina Green Park? Is it Marina? Southern Marina. It's where the Queen Mary is docked.
Right on the water,
yeah, it's a beautiful spot, and it's like a rolling grass hills. But unfortunately, I don't think they had that same amount of time for planning for this show, just because it was a last-minute change. Because what happened was that park is run by Long Beach, and Long Beach couldn't promise that the city itself wouldn't have imposed some sort of COVID restriction, 2 days before the show starts. And they couldn't put all this time and planning and effort and money into something that might get canceled or be, seriously curtailed within 2 days of the show.
Sorry, we only have 100 people.
Yeah, exactly. And they were like,
there was like 1,000 or more people.
1,000? Oh man, it was well north of 1,000 people. There were probably 6,000 people there.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there were 550 cars, and you got to figure a minimum of 2 people per car.
Yeah.
So you're already 1,000 people right there alone, plus vendors, and then the spectator line was a mile long and took an hour and a half to get in. So it was a scene.
Yeah, it was funny because we're standing there, and I look over, and Paul Huerta, we've had on the Osaka Flacco, we've had on the podcast, was standing there. We're like, hey, it's Paul.
He flew into town. Thanasi was in town.
And then
who else was there?
Ethan Tufts has been on the podcast.
Was there. I never saw him. Yeah, I was bummed I didn't see him.
Yeah, we didn't see him because there's so many people. I'm surprised we even saw Paul.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it was funny. Paul ended up staying out there for a week, and I'm sitting at the terminal to come home last Friday, and I look up, and Paul's standing there. He's on the same flight back to Boston with me.
That's so funny. And there were a ton of people that are from here in Phoenix that made the trip out there. It was neat because I got to introduce you to a bunch of the people I hang out with here that you don't know yet. You know what I mean? Like, you got to meet Aaron, you got to meet Christian with the other Cressida, you got to meet just a bunch of people that are my friends out here that you, as my long-term friend, haven't had a chance to meet yet because you haven't been out here since I've really been, established my life here. So it was a neat show, and not just for the cars, but the amount of people there was pretty good. It shows how strong this scene is out here.
I'm mad at myself for not going sooner.
Yeah, I wish I could go every year. I mean, I've only been. This is my 3rd or 4th time. I haven't been much. This is the 15th. This is the 15th annual, I think, or 16th annual. 16th. Yeah. So yeah, last year was supposed to be the 15th, and it got canceled due to COVID. So they did online last year, and then this year was the 16th. And I think there was a little bit of we'll call it pent up enthusiasm because there was no show for the last year. So it was a hell of a show, and it always is. And
it was really good.
I was super stoked because the best Mitsubishi went to a Challenger Sapporo Galant. So
yeah, so not a lot of Mitsubishis.
No, it was
disappointing.
It was the lowest turnout I've ever seen for Mitsubishis. The quality, though.
Yeah, it's quality just weird that they are. It seems like Mitsubishi is drying up. Even on the West Coast, I expected to see a lot more. There was like 3 or 4 really nice 3000 GTs, but they were last gen 3000 GTs. They weren't. There was no early ones.
Yep, not one Eclipse.
Yeah, no Eclipses. So the Gullwing Starion, the one Starion, this guy customized into a Gullwing car.
Sure,
it was really cool. It was really done well.
Yep.
But that was it.
No flat body. VR4.
One, street car. The rally car was really cool to see. I've seen that car online. I knew about that car.
Yep.
It's owned by Road Race Engineering. It was a car that was sent over here for promotional photos and then just ended up staying here.
Yeah. It's not a numbered car.
No, it's a very, very early car. It's done as a copy to a Group A car, but it's not a real Group A car. It's
correct.
Weird.
Yeah, it's got a weird bolt-in cage, but
yeah,
it was cool, it was neat. It had the right brakes, had the right wheels, it had all the cool stuff, except it wasn't just an actual race car. It still had like normal Galant VR4 seats. Like it was weird.
Yeah.
So and we met that kid from NorCal who had is that a 7th gen Galant?
I didn't even notice where that was in the show afterwards.
It was over there with the Galant VR4. It was like two spots over.
Yeah, I forgot to take a picture. There's a lot of stuff I just didn't take pictures of. I took a lot of pictures. And
there were 550 cars, Andrew. It's hard. It's overwhelming almost. I'd say it's overwhelming. But
so many nice golden era Hondas.
Yep. Honda's probably one of the biggest things there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Toyota's huge, but Toyota also has their own show put on by the same event organizers called Toyota Fest.
Yeah.
So I think that might eliminate some of the Toyotas from coming to this show specifically. I think a couple of stars of the show, there was obviously that Gullwing Starion, which my pictures must have made it to like the search page or the front page because, I have like just shy now of 500 likes on my Instagram for that picture, which is weird. Like that's 3 times my normal amount. So I was like, I wonder how that happened.
I know. I posted the ones I took to my Twitter, and people went crazy for it.
Yeah, it's got some serious pull, I guess. That was super cool. One of my favorite cars of the show, though, was that R33 Nismo 400R.
Yeah,
that was.
It showed up at SEMA later because SEMA was this week.
Yeah, a bunch of cars from JCCS were at SEMA. I noticed. The one thing I wish was at JCCS that was at SEMA was that yellow R31. Because that thing we had kind of an Z31, excuse me.
Yeah.
We had kind of a Z31 love fest at JCCS because they're kind of a slept on car and they look really good when done right.
Yeah. There was quite a few really good ones.
Yeah, and there was a yellow one at SEMA that was also stunning.
Yep.
Which won a bunch of awards. But yeah, it's hard to break it down and explain the JCCS show in a way that like really explains what you're looking at because it's
also just like West Coast shows are just different. Like you'll have celebrities there.
Yeah, there were actors and radio personalities and
I mean Larry Chen was walking around, so that was cool.
Sure, definitely car celebrities.
Wish I'd grabbed a Larry Chen sticker, but
yeah, his car was there, which is a celebrity in its own right.
Like 3 or 4 cars there. It's funny.
The actor from Fast and the Furious movies, who's somewhat of a car guy. I don't understand the obsession with this guy, but I mean he was there. He had a crowd around him all day. The guy who used to design Hot Wheels was there with his car that was made famous into a Hot Wheels car, the 510 wagon. And the cool thing was the other Hot Wheels designer who passed away this year, Jun Amai. His collection of cars was there.
Nope, you just mix them up.
Oh, Ryu Asada, excuse me.
Yeah,
Jun Amai was there. Ryu Asada passed away this year.
Yes.
His collection of cars was there, which is really neat to see. They're still being taken around with this kind of stuff, and I think that our friend Ben over at Japanese Nostalgia Car had something to do with that because they were over by his booth, and he was seen to be in charge of that display. And I know he was friends with Ryu, but his 2 NSXs, the one that's done up like the pace car from Suzuka Circuit. Yes, his Prelude was there, so that was super cool. Kind of like I don't know why it's something about seeing the guy like posthumously, seeing his cars like that. It was just kind of like it was just a nice thing. It was a nice touch. It was a good tribute to somebody who contributed a lot to Japanese car culture in America. And then you're right, Junimai is the 5'10" guy, but that's a huge swap right there. I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
He's very much alive. And he builds custom Hot Wheels that people pay a lot of money for. But he also has deals with some other companies to produce other die-casts. And I think I talked about it real quick the other day. I have the 5'10" drag race car that he was a big part of here. So neat stuff. Kaido House, I think is his thing. Not that he needs our promotion.
I would that Lee Keen was the guy too.
Lee Keen, Lee Customs pins, which is a thing I don't really understand, but they're not for everybody. I get them because they're cool. I like to have this little cartoon version of a car. I don't get the crazy collectability behind them. Yeah. But I guess it's not for me. One thing that is cool is my buddy Steve had partnered with him to debut his new build 78 Toyota pickup at JCCS, and Lean Customs had done a pin to commemorate his truck. Unfortunately, his truck was not done in time, but he did have the pins, and I got one of those pins. And again, I think they're neat. I just don't understand the fervor behind them online after they've sold out. When a pin that cost $5-10 sells for $500 to $1,000 sometimes on eBay. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I guess that's not everything's supposed to make sense to me, right? It's that whole hype beast mentality. I just don't understand how it translates to pins of cars, but good for him for doing it, right? He had an idea, he ran with it, and it became successful. So, and he's got a cool little Japanese, I think it's a Daihatsu delivery van that he sells them out of. That's pretty sweet. But yeah, it's hard to explain. Like I said, the show is just amazing. And the amount of manufacturer presence there is pretty good too. Obviously no Mitsubishi, unfortunately, but Nissan puts some time behind it. Toyota puts some time behind it. Honda seems to put some time behind it. So it's neat to see. I'm glad you got to see it for the first time. And now I expect you to be there almost every year.
I don't know about that, but it's a really good show. And if you have the chance to go, definitely go, especially if you're into JDM stuff. So, it's really cool. Plus, we got to see our buddy over at Ben over at Japanese Nostalgia Car, and we got a little hookup.
Yeah, he gave us
the new Toyota FJ80 that's coming out in their
FJ60.
FJ60.
Yep,
you wrote FJ80 in the notes.
I did write FJ80 in the notes, and I'll tell you why in a second. But carry on with the FJ60 first.
All right. So that is what collection is that? It's like the Toyota,
so it's one of the upcoming. It's one of the upcoming car culture collections, and it's just the car culture collection name is just Toyota, and it's a brand new casting that was created for this collection, and it's actually a replica of his personal FJ60, which has a dealer installed graphics package, and then on the back window of the vehicle it has the Japanese Nostalgia Car logo, which is super cool and probably a childhood dream come true. Imagine having something you're involved in and then an actual vehicle you own immortalized as a Hot Wheels car. Come on, how do you handle that?
Hot Wheels were waiting on off topic Galant VR4 and
there'll be a Galant VR4 and a multicolored Starion coming soon.
Yeah,
right. We got to get Ben's connections and make that happen, right? So anyway, super cool. They're not out yet, so it's cool to get a couple of those. He knows that we're giant Hot Wheels nerds, and I think he's a closeted Hot Wheels nerd himself. So we managed to he gave us a couple of those. So add to the collection a little early, which is neat. We'll get some pictures of those up so we can, show off our Hot Wheels wares before they're allowed to be sold to the public.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was cool. He was there. Was neat to say hi to our friend from Model Citizen, also a former guest on the podcast.
Who's the MC of the event?
He's been the MC for quite a few years. Patrick Strong. He does a very good job doing that, but it's neat to see him outside of buying and selling diecasts or being on the podcast. Unfortunately, didn't get a chance to spend too much time with him because he's a busy man at JCCS every year, but got to at least say hi. My local drug dealer / diecast dealer Naomi calls him my drug dealer because I spent all my money with him. Jeff was there with all his wares, tons and tons of stuff. So people are always blown away to see all his stuff for sale. But yeah, what a weekend! I can't again go look at our pictures. Pictures say a lot more than weekend, right?
That's right.
What else did we do? Oh, hold on. FJ60, FJ80 was in there because I put also FJ80. If you read what I put, the FJ80 is also a new diecast, and I just wanted to bring it up with the FJ60s because I managed to get one of those from Jeff as well. So I have the FJ60 and the new FJ80 Hot Wheels cars.
They had some debuts of new ones coming out. And there's a Sentra SER in the new Hot Wheels coming out.
Oh yeah, there is a Sentra SER.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are a couple other cool ones in there too, but I don't remember what they were. The big news, of course, is while Hot Wheels might not have a 78 Dodge Colt Auto Off Topic Edition coming out anytime soon, Matchbox is doing a 78 Plymouth
Arrow.
Thank you.
Weird.
So yeah, that's super cool. But anyway, side note. Fast forward. Next note. Other events.
Cars and Coffee LA.
Super cool show.
Really cool. So apparently it's the last day of the month. Every month.
It's the last Sunday of the month.
Last Sunday of the month, and it's up at Griffith Park.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like near the historical. It's not a Ferris wheel.
It is a Ferris wheel. No, Ferris wheel.
Merry-go-round.
Merry-go-round. There you go.
Similar, but different.
Yeah,
it's horizontal versus vertical.
Yes, the horizontal Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
So
yeah, so I met you guys up there.
Yep, that was the next morning.
That was really cool.
Fully worth getting up for.
Yeah, totally different vibe than like a lot of Cars and Coffees around here.
Yeah, it was pretty low key. The only complaint I had about the whole thing was the fact that Naomi ordered coffee and like a couple of pastries from the coffee truck, and she literally waited 45 minutes for it.
Yeah, that was a little ridiculous. Like, I don't know why she'd be banging that stuff out. Like,
yeah, and then
coffee and pastries.
And then by the time we got it, like hers was cold. So I think that, and a bunch of people around us were waiting too. So it was like they were making them and then putting them aside, and it was a whole thing. But that's of all complaints, it's a minor complaint, I guess. It has nothing to do with the actual event. That's just whoever they hired. But people were saying it's not usually like that, and it's the same company that usually does it. So there must have been some kind of issue inside the booth.
It's just, and then again, it's just an LA thing. It's just funny. There's just like Magnus Walker was just hanging out there.
Yep. Yeah, I saw the world famous Paul from Auto Kennel was hanging out there with his Isuzu Impulse.
Oh, he's at JCCS too.
He was. Yep. I didn't see him at JCCS, though. I saw him there.
I saw the car.
Talked to him for a couple minutes before you got there about a Via Cross.
Oh yeah, that Via Cross was awesome.
Yep.
There's a bunch of cool stuff there. I mean, Renault Turbo 2 or whatever. Was it the Cressida?
Yeah, great Cressida. 78 Cressida. Beautiful blue car. Oh, you mean the gray one? That wasn't mine. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yours was there too. But
yeah, there was a cool Rolls Royce, like a 50s Rolls convertible that was almost all original. It was painted once in like 1981, but the interior was like duct taped together, and the guy just drove it. He drives it once every 6 months minimally, he said, or else the brakes freeze up.
It was funny too because I was posting some pictures of it, and people were like, "Oh, that's so and so, and that's so and so." They're just like tagging the people on like Instagram and Twitter, like that's most of these people. Like,
that's funny.
Funny how that works. Yeah,
I haven't posted any pictures from that event yet. Actually, I've been just concentrating on a few pictures of JCCS still every day. I should move on to that event now. I got some shots too. But
yeah, that was like really, really cool. I love that area of LA. I love that neighborhood. There's neighborhoods up around there.
It seemed like it was kind of like if you're anybody into cars in that area, you go to that show. And it wasn't like a Cars and Coffee in New England, or even so much Cars and Coffee here, where I don't think there was one Dodge Charger. I don't think there was one modern Mustang.
No.
I mean, there was like one Cayenne or Cayman, whatever the SUV Porsche is. And there was a couple, like there's one Tesla. And it was mostly, other than that, it was all vintage stuff, like 85 and older minimum.
I should have brought my Outlander Sport there.
Yeah, right. There was a Rivian. We saw a Rivian. I haven't seen
Yep.
a Rivian in person yet. That was neat.
I saw.
Driving by.
So that was the first one I saw today. Then I saw another one the same as that color, different plates.
Oh, really?
Up near on the way back to my hotel.
Interesting. Well, it was neat to see because I didn't know they actually really existed. I've only ever seen pictures.
Oh no, my coworker's like, no, there's a lot of them out here because a lot of them are doing testing out here. So
anyway, it was cool. It was cool to see one, and I came back here, and nobody here barely even believed me that I saw one. So it was neat to see. Yeah, there was some amazing stuff there. It's funny. It was probably a little heavier on Japanese stuff because there was a bunch of stuff that was at JCCS that was there, probably more so than normal. But yeah, overall, it was a hell of a show. There was for an informal Cars and Coffee, there were some heavy hitters there. TVR Tuscan Speed 6.
Oh yeah.
Like what is even that? How is that even on the road in the United States? It had Canadian plates on it, but still, what a neat thing to see. Like,
oh yeah, a lot of Montana LLCs.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Whatever. It is what it is. It's hard to own a car in LA, I guess.
Yeah.
So you gotta take it as you can. But yeah, what a neat event, and I wish we had stuff of that level. Like, the closest we have here would probably be, the 4 till 4 events.
Yeah,
and then we have another one here that kind of looks a little bit like that. It has some really nice fancy cars at it, but they're a little more. It's a little more exclusive, and you got to be a member to actually put your car in the show, which is annoying. So the Cars and Coffee LA thing was. It wasn't the Malibu Cars and Coffee that you keep hearing about getting shut down. It was like there were no supercars. There were no Lamborghinis. There was one McLaren something 650, 675, 720.
It's also not a residential area. There's no businesses around.
Right. But it didn't matter because nobody was being a dick.
No.
Like, it was just a cool crowd, and you could see why somebody like a Magnus Walker would choose that one because he's a pretty famous car celebrity. And he wasn't mobbed by people all day. Like, yeah, people came up and they said hi and they shook his hand, and he was super cool to everybody that said hi to him. But
yeah, I didn't have the cojones to go up and go cool Magnus Walker costume because it was Halloween.
Yeah, it would have been funny. But if he went to the Cars and Coffee Malibu, he'd just be mobbed the crowd around him the whole day. You know what I mean? And this crowd was more like, it was pretty low key, and everybody was just, the vibe was great. Everybody was just into the cars, and they were into just having a conversation. You could walk up to anybody and just have a conversation with them. And there was no, everybody talks about how elitist LA is and how cliquey it is. This wasn't that at all. It's just like, you're there, you're into the cars, have a nice conversation. I spent 15 minutes talking to this guy about the Mercedes Hearse, who was just another guy who was randomly there in another car. He didn't own the Hearse. We were just standing around it, talking about it and how ridiculous it was and how cool it was. The guy dragged it out of a field for Halloween show, it seemed.
Yeah.
And towed it with another turbo diesel Benz wagon from the 80s.
Yeah.
Which was super cool. But yeah, it's a cool vibe out there. And I would go just for that show. You know what I mean? Like, if Japanese Car Day wasn't the day before Japanese Classic Car Show, and we just went to Cars and Coffee LA, I think I'd have been totally satisfied.
Mm-hmm. It was really cool.
Yeah. It was an awesome, awesome event. And I hope next time there's the same event again. Although I don't think that Radwood is the last week of the month, so it won't be the same. But
no. Then we went and got breakfast, and then you guys had to leave.
Yep.
I went over to the American Driving Museum.
Sure.
Maybe it's a decent museum on a regular day. It was their trunk or treat day because it was Halloween.
Sure.
So there was tons of kids there. They had all the cars are kind of packed in there. Smoke machine.
Oh,
it's dark. It's like a donation only museum, and I was like, all right, whatever. I don't know. I just had a $20 bill.
Yeah, that's.
I literally went in, and I was like, oh, this is like a cruise night type, cars.
It's all 57 Chevys.
Yeah, I was like, all right, and then I couldn't really see him. It was super busy. I was like, I'll just leave. So,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, it sounds like it was probably a bad day to go.
Anyways, I found there's a park. It's right next to an In-N-Out, actually, where you can actually watch planes fly into LAX, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Stood there for a little bit. And then I was looking up. I was like, what else is around? On the way back to my hotel, so it's actually adjacent to John Wayne Airport. It was the Lion Air Museum, which was really cool. So they had they had a B-17 in there, DC-2, And then the transport version of that, which I forget what it's called, maybe a C-17.
C-17 is the Galaxy, isn't it?
I don't remember. It's World War II DC-5, but it's or DC-2, and it's the troop carrier when they parachute out of World War II.
Okay.
So they had some cars in there. It was a cool museum, cool aviation museum if you're into that.
So you can watch the Globe Master 3.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was. But they had nice the hangar. It's in a hangar.
C5 is the Galaxy. Excuse me.
So the hangars are closed, but they have big glass windows, and you can watch jets take off.
That's cool.
Yeah, like commercial jets take off out of John Wayne. So, yeah, it was a cool little museum. Cheap. On my way back to the hotel. So
yeah, that's awesome. It's funny. I have memories of a C5 Galaxy because when I was a kid, they had one at the Hanscom Air Show.
Yeah,
that you could get up inside of and like crawl around and walk around. And
yeah, it's just funny because I've seen several B-17s now. I saw the Collings Foundation one now, which unfortunately crashed. But I saw this one, and I saw there's one out near you it's like the Arizona Air Force or something, Commemorative Air Force.
Okay.
That's a cool one. That's a late one, like the one that's at this museum. So like the Collings Foundation one is all flat green, that like what you think of when you think of B-17.
Sure.
And then these other ones are late ones, like the one at the Lion Air one was for like VIPs, so it didn't see combat, so it was polished aluminum.
Okay.
Instead of being drab green. And then the one at the Arizona Museum was a late production one. So at a certain point towards late in the war, they're like, we're not going to paint them anymore. We're winning. So they just would leave in polished aluminum. So that was cool too, because that was like back in, it was like 2011. We were visiting for Christmas, and I'm taking my brother-in-law there with me because we needed something to do for the day. So, and it was like just out on the tarmac, and the guy, it's all these old timer volunteers like, yeah, just go out and look at it. And I'm like, okay. So like walked out, just let me walk inside of it and go into the cockpit, and nobody's around. You're like, all right.
That's super cool.
Yeah. They're so narrow when you go up. Like they look so big, and then you get inside of them. And like I had to turn sideways to go up the ladder to get into the cockpit. Like it wasn't,
So the one
I'm not very broad shouldered, but I couldn't fit in it.
The one in the Lion Museum, looking at a picture, it's the polished one, and it's got like a caricature of Elmer Fudd on it called the Fuddy Duddy.
Yep,
that's cool.
Yeah, they're very very cool.
Maybe I'll try to take a trip to this museum next time in LA. So
yep,
I know because I'm going to be in LA in 2 weeks, but I know I'm going to the Peterson because they have a new exhibit of all the Bond cars over the years.
Yeah, I skipped the Peterson because I'd been there a bunch. Maybe I should have gone. I don't know.
Yeah, you just got to go for the right exhibits, and they have the Bond car exhibit, which looks really cool. It is everything from the submarine Lotus to the, more modern Jaguars and stuff. So
I'm hoping, waiting for some other stuff to fall through with work. So maybe I'll get to go back out.
Fall through or follow through?
Follow through.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well, it would be amazing if it worked out with Bradwood weekend, because that would be perfect timing all around.
Supply chain issues. We're waiting on stuff. So
sure. We could see all the boats from the coast. So
yeah, it was weird flying in.
They're just sitting there. We could see them from dinner because we get dinner, Saturday night? And we just are all kind of sitting out there because we get dinner on the beach. Yeah. So cool.
All right. So anyway, that wraps up LA.
It does. LA is over.
I did want to look at the one thing that really caught me from SEMA, other than that Z31, was the Ford crate motor, the E-Eliminator.
Yep, which is a great name.
Yeah, it is a great name,
and it's a historic name from Ford too, because that was like a Mercury Cougar Eliminator was like the high horsepower. It was like the Mustang Cobra jet of Mercury.
Sorry, it's called the Illuminator.
Oh, it's not the Eliminator.
Nope. So yeah, it's kind of neat, but it's the traction motor out of a Mach E GT. And they're calling it a crate motor. Or actually, Ford is calling it Illuminator Mach electric motor, Mach E electric motor. media outlets are calling it a crate motor, and that's where my issue comes from, because it's not a crate motor, because it doesn't. Now they debuted it in this F100. That was really cool. It's really, really cool looking F100 pickup, but it's got custom frame, custom subframes front and rear to make it all-wheel drive. So two of these drive units driving the front wheel, one's driving the front wheels, one's driving the rear wheels. That's really cool, but it's literally just this motor. None of the things you need to control it. No batteries. It costs $4,000, which isn't too bad, but
well, it's a little expensive when you realize it doesn't include anything to run it.
Yeah, but
it's like a short block.
Like a crate motor would mean this would bolt in place of a small block Ford.
Sure, and bolt in place might be an oversimplification of it, but wouldn't require major structural changes to the vehicle. It would be able to be inserted in the same area where the engine came out. Like a crate, like say, you went to Summit and you bought a crate motor, big block Chevy. Theoretically, you could slot it in the same hole a small block came out of. It might require a few modifications here and there, but nothing major. Some mounts and some kind of bell housing change, but theoretically, it would bolt in the same configuration and space that the original engine came out of.
Right.
And this is not that. This requires subframes and special construction. And what Chevy's doing, the electric motor that Chevy is selling, I would consider a crate motor.
Yeah, it bolts in place of a small block Chevy, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
which makes the most sense.
So if you want to do stuff to convert old cars and build EV hot rods, you need a thing that uses the architecture of a small block engine.
Yep, and it might not be the most efficient, which is...
No, but you have all of these things, these legacy things that take that engine.
Yep.
And if you can make a motor that will fit in that same place, the rest of the stuff can be adapted. Because you're not going to build your own chassis, you build your own subframes, build all your own suspension pickup points just to run these motors. It's way easier to just have a Ford F100 chassis and drop an electric motor in that fits on the same motor mounts, and then you figure out the rest.
Yep, that seems like the best way to do it to me.
Yeah, that's the way you should do it.
But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's a crate motor is the wrong terminology for it. It's not a bolting conversion. It's not something you can just... I mean, I guess you could figure out in your garage how to do it, but it's not something that would be easily done in your garage. Whereas theoretically, you could bolt in the Chevy conversion in a weekend. Theoretically. Mm-hmm. So, yep, nope, I agree with you. It is cool though, and I am down with some of this electric tech that's coming out. And every day that goes by, I'm more sold on EV hot rodding. I'm not at a point where I'm going to go out and experiment myself and build one of these things myself, but I'm less negative about it every day, and I can see the advantage in certain platforms. I wouldn't want to take my, romping stomping muscle car and turn it into electric, but a pickup truck like that or some big 50s, 60s cruiser, I see no disadvantage to making it quieter and more efficient. So
yeah,
you still get that cool old style and modern tech, and it's
one
less car in the junkyard and one more car still on the road.
Yeah, so speaking of concepts for that, the Hyundai Grandeur sedan,
Grandeur,
which we've determined is really just a Mitsubishi.
Yeah, eagle-eyed Mitsubishi fans will know that is a rebadged Mitsubishi Debonair, 86 to 92 Debonair body style, which was sold as a Hyundai Grandeur because Hyundai and Mitsubishi shared a ton of tech in the early days of Hyundai. In fact, if it wasn't for Mitsubishi, Hyundai wouldn't exist. So all of the early Hyundais were Mitsubishi powered. And even some of the Hyundais were sold as Mitsubishis, like the Prius. And then some Mitsubishis were sold as Hyundais, like the Grandeur. Now, we didn't get a Grandeur here in the States. I'm sure Hyundai didn't figure that Americans would spend the kind of money it would have cost to federalize a grandeur for the States for a Hyundai, especially because Mitsubishi didn't even sell a Debonair here, so it would have been a whole thing. But they did sell.
It can be best described as generic sedan.
Yeah, it's a little more than generic. It has some interesting lines. It's got a weird like covered rear wheel kind of thing. It's very much like the Galant Sigma that we got. It's
like it's a GTA car, man.
Yeah, it is a Grand Theft Auto car. Like it's almost a car, but not a car. It's like a Grand Theft Auto Buell Lincoln Cadillac.
Yeah.
But they're neat. They're neat looking cars, and the electric one they did is super cool because they took and kept the styling the same, and then just changed the taillights to look like the original taillights, with they're all LEDs, and the headlights are LEDs, and the dash is all LED. And
yeah, they redid the interior. And
this is the second one they've done. Do you remember the first one they did?
Yeah, it was something else.
They did another not American market Hyundai's first production car, the Pony. And that was a little hatchback, a rear-wheel drive hatchback. They did sell in Canada, but never sold here in America.
Yeah.
But fun fact about the Pony, speaking of Mitsubishi, is that the basic architecture of the car and the engine and transmission in the up through 1984 Hyundai Pony are the same in my 74 Galant.
Oh, weird.
My 74 Colt, I should say, which is a Galant. So this is a 70s Galant that's combined with the floor pan of a Ford. I'm going to forget the name of the Ford. It's a European market Ford is the floor pan and rear diff from the Ford with the Mitsubishi engine and transmission and front suspension. In fact, when you lower a Dodge Colt by putting shorter springs or cutting the springs, you compensate for that by getting Hyundai Pony strut inserts because they're shorter than the factory Colt ones, and they make up the difference in the lower spring. So, yeah, I always manage to sneak my Dodge Colt trivia in there somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always on the lookout for a Canadian market Hyundai Pony, just because it's kind of a weird, totally fits my collection of mishmashed cars. They made a 2-door and a 4-door hatchback, and they made a 2-door El Camino style pickup. So I'm always kind of like sort of looking for one, but not really. But if one popped up, I'd probably buy it.
And supposedly they're teasing that they were going to do the similar conversion to the Galloper, which is just a Montero.
Yep.
So that's cool.
Yep, rebadged Montero. Is it Galloper or a Galloper?
Galloper? 2 L's. Galloper.
I don't know, but the cool thing with the Pony is that it's literally, like I said, it's a mid-70s Mitsubishi Galant, just with a 80s Giugiaro, thank you, with an 80s Giugiaro design body on it. So it's like a mishmash 70s 80s Scirocco.
Yeah, much better looking.
No, definitely not. If you saw it, you would not say that.
I'm looking at the concept, the EV concept. It's next to the Debonair in this article. It looks really good.
Oh, is it? I didn't see that. I must read a different article.
So anyway,
sweet.
That's an episode.
I think it's an episode. Also, because I'm getting very hungry and I have not eaten dinner yet, I'm going to go ahead and call it. Also, it's almost time to watch Oak Island.
Oh yeah, new season. Yep. It's our other obsession. Maybe we should do an Oak Island podcast.
Definitely not.
All right.
We definitely don't want to talk about it during our Cat Fancy podcast here either.
No. Yeah. Follow us on Facebook, Out of Top Podcast, Out of Topic on Instagram, Out of Topic on Twitter. I'm on Twitter, Race and Anger, and Instagram, Race and Anger. And Brad, where can they find you?
Currently just on Instagram at TSISS350.
All right, cool. Keep cars analog and aim for the roses.